You're joining the Loudr Lawyer Network, the podcast where we sit down with the law firm owners, attorneys, and visionaries that are making the most noise in the legal landscape nationwide to find out the secrets to their success. Other podcasts think they're getting loud, but we're getting louder. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Loudr Lawyer Network, where we help attorneys scale to million-dollar months through powerful strategies and connections. And my guest today is attorney Zach Herschensohn. Zach, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing? And first off,
Hey,
let me thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today.
Hey, man, thank you for being here. I see that you're an attorney that stands for, really connecting with the public, I saw a clip that from one of your individuals, your clients, that had been rear-ended and was distraught. Said he didn't know what to do, and he was referred to you, and you came across and took care of his case on a hit and run that happened, and he was just in a comfortable place after that. So I know that you're a person who puts the human first above everything else, and that's a beautiful thing. So take me back to the moment before you ever became an attorney. What made you go in the route of becoming an attorney, and specifically PI?
Well, let me start out by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm the oldest of three kids. Both of my parents are academics. My mother is a retired professor. My father also is an academic professor. We went into nonprofit management, but ultimately these people are intellectual types. And as I sort of looked out on the future, I wanted to get two things out of my career. In the one instance, I wanted to make sure that whatever I did, I was excellent at it. So I wanted to know that I had the capability to do so. The other one was that I wanted to have a profession where I was involved in serving other people, where I could see the fruits of my labor in the assistance that I was able to provide, right? So, I saw the way in which my parents, exercised their talents, and I didn't feel it was hands-on enough. I had one uncle who was a lawyer. He worked in LA. He spoke Spanish and English. He never made much money, but he had a lot of clients, my Uncle Fred. And I figured, like, with that combination of, like my parents being academics, I knew somebody was in my family who'd been an attorney. So I had this idea that, like, like that's something I could do. Like, that's something I could do and be good at it, right? I knew it was a cognitive, it was a brain central kind of like job. I hadn't been a great student, but I knew I could do it. And I knew I could help people. And I think that's what I've done. So those two things, one, being able to do it, and two, being able to help real people in the world. Those were the two big things that led to me to do what I do, to be a lawyer. And then my choice of being a personal injury lawyer was one that I just thought that this was a great opportunity, and I could talk more about that, but that's what led to it.
Right. So what college did you go to?
I went to Western Washington University, which is a small public university in Washington State. It's just south of the Canadian border. Okay. And then I went to St. John's University in New York City for my law degree. I've been an attorney since 2003, and I've practiced exclusively in Washington State. But for some very limited exceptions, I've handled exclusively personal injury claims. But all variety of personal injury claims, tried multiple cases, done almost every single kind of personal injury case you can imagine, from asbestos to product liability to car crash to slip and fall. I think maybe the only thing I haven't done in terms of class action is like class actions maybe, but I've been involved in almost every other type of personal injury case. I work for really large personal injury firms. I work for one firm that had 50 attorneys. I work for ones that had, one or two attorneys. And my firm now has 3 attorneys. The one that I started in 2009, and we have about a total of 16 staff, inclusive of attorneys. So worked at all different size firms, and always with the objective of giving the best service.
Right. So you said man, well, that's an impressive start. You said you worked for another firm that had 50 attorneys, and was it all personal injury?
Yeah, so just by way of background, I worked my first instance introduction to personal injury came with my first job as an intern. I worked at a firm called Levinson Friedman, which doesn't exist anymore. It had about 8 personal injury lawyers who were partners. There was a partnership, it was a large partnership. There was one associate, and then I was like a law clerk. I was working there right as I was taking the bar. And then I went from there to a firm that did some personal injury and then workers' compensation. And then from there, I went straight into litigation, asbestos litigation, which all of those things are essentially a variety of personal injury, asbestos litigation, or our product liability claims. Fundamentally, they're a very specific type of personal injury with some very specific types of techniques or claims management kind of approaches. But fundamentally, personal injury. From that, I went to a maritime firm, worked for a medium-sized tort claim maritime case. So these were all mostly Jones Act claims, some third-party maritime torts and other 905B claims and so forth, but mostly Jones Act claims. That still remains part of my practice today. Right. And from there, I started my own firm in 2009. And we've been in business continuously since 2009. It's our 17th anniversary in September. So we've been doing this for a long time now. Now our client base has grown and our staff has grown, and we continue to do what I was doing right from the instance, which is provide excellent legal services to people who've been hurt in accidents that aren't their fault.
Right. No, that's a very impressive resume. Starting out as an intern, seeing people that were hurt or victims of negligence that was no fault of their own. How did that set on your mind as a young intern? And in that process of taking on that, what did you see that was missing that Zach could bring to the table?
All right. Well, let me be very candid about a lot of this process, right? So I was a lawyer, right? And I wanted to make sure, given that I was a lawyer, that I was in a practice that I was comfortable with, that I thought was fun, was interesting, and fit my personality, right? And so when I first started working for this firm at Levinson Friedman, I couldn't help but notice that the plaintiff lawyers, all of them that worked there, were unique individuals. Like, they were fun. They all dressed really well. They all had very nice cars. They were flamboyant. Every one of these guys was like a character. And all the lawyers, for the most part, that I'd met before that were like accountants or something, right? And these guys were fun, right? And and interesting and unique, and they weren't, right? And I saw that. And then the other thing I was really important from my perspective was that something really felt right to me about a contingency fee. I really liked that aspect of it, even though at the time I wasn't getting paid per se as a contingent fee lawyer because I was just an employee, but it always appealed to me. So there were things about being a plaintiff lawyer that appealed to me, which was like, hey, you're only going to get paid a lot if you're successful. I love that. And I still to this day, I love that because it allows me to do a good job, but only get paid when I do a good job.
Right.
So I always feel very comfortable with the fees that I'm charging, because they're fees after the service has been provided, and they're fees that are based upon performance. So if you ever look, if you see any other job like that, you're going to know the person doing it has great success. Now, the other part of this that really motivated me was that I felt that it was, as I started working with the actual clients, right? It's just incredible. It sounds trite, but it's incredibly rewarding to be able to do something. Use your gifts, use the things that you've been given by God, plus your hard work, plus all the years you put in, to help somebody in a way that's unique, right? It's like, that is the best feeling in the world, right? To give to other people. It's tremendous, and give with your special gifts. It's really the best. I love it. I love that part of the job, even though I've been doing it so long. Like, it's hard work, and I get tired, and I really do get tired because I've worked so hard.
Wow.
But I really love it. And look, I'm just selfish. I love the way it makes me feel to help other people. So it's turned out to be great. It kind of, some of it I stumbled into, but it's really been a wonderful experience. And it's one of the best things that's happened to me in my whole life, actually, is just getting lucky enough to find something where I can do this. It's just great. It really is.
Man, that's a beautiful. So before we started, we were talking a little bit, and I talked about storytelling and what you just did right there, and encompassing your faith, encompassing God in the journey, because that's the foundation on which we stand for, and those gifts that we have. And the fact that you stand boldly on that, man, I appreciate that. That's beautiful, Zach. It truly is. Because
we always have to remember there's things that we got that we didn't do anything for. Yeah. And those are the things that we need to publish, but not so we can take credit for these things that we just got as gifts, so that we can share those gifts, because there's other people who don't have those same kind of gifts, and the best thing to do is to share them.
Absolutely. That's well said. So every attorney has a case that quietly changes them forever. Tell me about the case that changed the way you go about business.
So this is a case that's very near and dear to my heart. And it's public record, and it was a settlement with the state of Washington. So I'll be able to tell you everything about it, because there aren't any secrets in this case at all. I represent a lot of individuals who work on the Washington State ferry system. I first represented a Washington State ferry worker, an oiler, right? They're members of the Marine Engineer Beneficial Association, the oilers. They're the maintenance mechanics on the vessels that traverse the largest ferry system in the United States, the Washington State ferries. And a gentleman that I represented was injured while he was going into work on an off day to testify at the headquarters. And unfortunately for him, while he was at the headquarters, he slipped in their parking lot and injured his back permanently, horribly injured his back. And unfortunately, no one saw how he got hurt. And there were a lot of difficult parts about the case. And so, as it turned out, I was just not sure. Slip and fall in a parking lot. He's a maritime. I wasn't sure if I was going to take the case. I talked to some other lawyer who I hold in quite high regard, actually one of my first bosses, and he goes, "That's a case." And so I signed it up, and that was in 2020. It was right around COVID.
Oh wow!
And I had my first daughter was 1. I filed it sometime in, I think, September of 2020. It must have been let me see that. It must have been before that, because it happened. The actual event happened in 2017. Anyway, event happened in 2017, so it would have been within 3 years of that. So, and let's see. Oh yeah, it was December. It was December 2017. So I did file it in September, and I had a 1-year-old. And when I finally resolved that claim, she was 6. She was 6 years old, and I had two daughters at that point. The case litigated for 5 years.
Wow.
And I went up to the Court of Appeals, and I came down. I ended up making so little money. I mean, we settled that claim because it was just a difficult case. you know, the client and I became really good friends. You know, and I got really attached to the case, right? And then it was through, I think, the process of litigating on that case, and just keep going and keep going and keep going. I wanted to give up so many times. I wanted to give up because it was such hard work. I knew I wasn't going to make any money. The state was saying they weren't going to do. Give you an example. In 2022, the state billed out $700,000 defending this case. That's that, and I was on the receiving end of all that work. So that means I was mirroring back, and that's just 1 year, right? And so what came about as a consequence of that was just a hardening of me. That it just hardened me, just made me tougher and tougher and tougher. Because at one point or another, I knew, because of the factual problems. I mean, the guy's a wonderful man, and he had a horrible thing happen to him, and I got a little bit too attached to him and this and that. But the case just had some horrible facts in it. You know, unwitnessed accident, oil slick that nobody saw. He didn't know where it happened in the garage. I mean, he couldn't remember anything. I mean, you know, all sorts of things wrong with it made it a weak case. I just couldn't give up on it. Couldn't give up, and I just kept grinding, and I kept giving. And they kept saying, we're never paying a penny. We're never paying a penny. I you know, and they had all these roadblocks that went up. They spent hundreds of $1,000s defending the case. Now, as it turned out, I ended up settling the claim for $500,000, just a lot less than I thought it was worth in terms of how badly hurt he was. But like, just all the stuff, unwitnessed accident, didn't know where it happened, didn't have any photos of the oil, didn't have the ticket that he paid to pay for it. I mean, there were things, just so many things stacked up. There were also legal defenses that they had, you know, substantive legal arguments to just get rid of the case. I mean, we could have won the trial and still lost on appeal. So what it did was it tested how much I was willing to give. And it tested me, and I gave everything I had. And I talked to other lawyers. I said, just cash in your chips, you know, like get out. And I just couldn't do it. So it was through that process, I think, that it really developed me, you know, like, I guess you'd say character. So that case changed me more than anything else. Now there's other cases that happened right around the same time. There's trials that I did that have affected me, but that one more than anything else, it forced me to go up to another level in terms of my level of commitment to a client, to a case. And you know, I think if any lawyer ever looks at that file, it's literally a massive file. They're going to know what kind of person I am, what kind of lawyer I am.
I mean,
any lawyer looks at that, they're going to know instantaneously.
Yeah,
I never give up. I never will.
That right there speaks. That speaks. I think this is a perfect time for me to. I'll come back to the. No, I'm gonna ask this question first. If I interviewed your first client 20 years ago, let's say 20, give or take, and your newest client today, what would both of them say about you that's never changed?
I never give up.
Never give up.
It can be a really bad thing, right? And I would say this, I do give up, but my instinct is to never give up. And it's a really hard thing for me to not to kind of turn the screw. If anything, I hold on too tight to things that maybe I ought to let go of. So that's the thing, is like, you know, I do have this never give up kind of thing going. You know, look, Matt's case is a good example. From a financial standpoint, I should have given up. From an emotional standpoint, I might have been better off giving up. So yeah, that's one thing that's definitely not changed. I think there's a lot of other things. You know, my personality has developed as we age. I think in terms of being a lawyer, I'm just much more serious. I think as you age, you become more serious about making sure things get done right. So I'm a more serious guy. I I don't have, I mean, I used to just be like a demon. I would work the first 3 years I was a lawyer. I probably worked an average. I'm not exaggerating this. I worked every single Saturday, every single Sunday for 3 years. And I don't know what people make these outrageous claims about how many hours they work, but I know that I bought a condominium in 2005, and I left that job in 2000. I left it in late 2007, and I started, I think, late 2004, early 2005. And the only thing I ever cooked in the oven that I had was one frozen pizza. I lived there for 3 years.
Wow.
So like I just worked the whole time, and like that was it. So, you know, like that's kind of how I got my start, is that. And then obviously, you know, it's very, very challenging profession. And so, you know, I feel like it's a lot like serving in some sort of serving in some kind of combat circumstance, or
Right.
or if you're litigating, if you're really litigating cases. I mean, if you're really going to trial and you're doing litigation, constant deadlines. You're constantly under a deadline. You go on a vacation, you've got deadlines that get imposed on you. You don't do anything there's no break. There's no vacation. There's no stopping. I think now recently, like in the last 3 years, as I've become more detached from the actual litigating, but I had 3 or 4 weeks off in 2007 till maybe like 2023, and I had no break. I went straight through 20 years. So I do think that it's like that's what you want. If you get in a car crash or you get an injury, you want someone who's serious and who's actually litigated. And that requires that you probably work for a firm that has a large enough staff. You have to have been exposed to different circumstances and so forth. And you have to be willing and capable to bring that force to bear for any client that you're taking on. And so that I think is the realistic result of, you know, that many years of service, if you will.
No, I'm sitting here listening, and you talk about the litigation aspect, like you were always working, taking care of deadlines and things of that nature, like being in the courtroom. So what's a habit that no one knows that would get you ready before you're about to step into court? Like what got you pumped up? Because you have to have that zeal, that push that you have of never giving up and just being ready. You're like, you said it, like you're going into combat, you know? And I think that's such an impressive moment.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I'll tell you, the thing that makes the job extremely challenging, and what motivates me, I'm not sure exactly what motivates everybody else, but like, you know, so for example, like someone's been permanently disabled because of an accident. They don't have sufficient funds, so they're going to be able to carry out the rest of their days with comfort. And there may be, for example, facts in their case that make it challenging to be able to get them recovery. And the defendants are saying, well, gee, like, look at this fact, look at that. We don't want to pay. And the only way that this gentleman or woman is going to be able to have sufficient money so they can take care of themselves is if you go ahead and you put in like 100% effort. So what motivates me is just not being somebody who's okay. A lawyer who, in that circumstance, who I think is a fine human being, is someone who puts out 100% effort. Like, this person's in pain and is disabled, and they've given you the opportunity to serve them in a way where, I mean, imagine that you're saying, hey, my future, I'm going to put it in your hands. So, I mean, like, just my biggest motivation, you know, when I've gone into trial is just how I have to go. I mean, if you're going to lose, because you got a good chance you might lose, right? If you're going to lose, you don't want to be looking back with regrets about, well, no, I didn't do this. I didn't wake up early enough. I didn't prepare enough. Right. So that's really the thing that motivates me, is that if you've hired me to represent you, you need to give 100%, 100%, right? There's a book that's written by a guy named John Wooden, who was the coach of the UCLA basketball program for many years,
Yeah.
right?
Coach
And he has
Wooden.
you heard about that? You know, the pyramid of success?
I know about Coach Wooden. Yeah.
Okay, you know about
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And he has a pyramid of success, and people can look that up online. But the principle of the pyramid of success is that success is defined Success is achieved when you put maximum effort into any endeavor, right? Success is not achieved when you have the external trappings of success in terms of a challenge. You know, like you could have a successful verdict, but that's not where the success is accomplished. Success is accomplished by putting out maximum effort. And then the results are not what you judge your success based upon. So for me, that's really my lodestar in terms of like if I have to go to trial or something like that, which is one of the reasons that I've stepped back from it. And I've learned some other techniques for trying to get the best representation for our clients. And we have a lot of very good lawyers who we work with. I will try cases from time to time if I have to. But that's really what motivates me in terms of both the case preparation, the organizational structure, the structure of my business, and also the methodologies that I employ to make sure that the clients get the best possible representation, the best possible outcome. But for me, success is defined by doing the job correctly with the maximum effort, right?
Right.
And so if you don't put maximum effort out and you lose more, you really don't feel very good, right? But if you know in your heart that you tried your best, you put out 100%, then it like washes away all sins. So that's really what's motivated me is like, I don't want to be in some position where some outcome, a trial didn't work out for a client. And I know in the back of my head that like I cut a corner or didn't put out maximum effort. That's not acceptable to me. I mean, I just can't live with myself. So that's the approach that I have, right? And I have it not in the main office, but in our Ellensburg office, I have this frame pyramid of success, because that's what you're worried about. And you're in trial, you're worried about losing, and the only antidote to being worried about losing is to forgive yourself, because it might happen. You're putting you're putting your case in the hands of 12 unknown strangers. And they can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So you want to make sure internally that you put out maximum effort. And so that's what motivates me in every single case and in the way in which I run this practice.
Wow, man, that's a beautiful story. I'm all hyped up. When an insurance company sees an insurance company sees your name, they see your name. What do you hope they're thinking before they even open the file?
Here's what I would say about insurance companies, right? So one point is I've never had the experience to be internally embedded within an insurance apparatus, nor have I been a defense lawyer. However, I also do have some powers of observation, given that I've been litigating and or handling claims with insurance carriers for now 23 plus years. So I have a very good sort of spider sense about what insurance carriers and what the way in which they evaluate matters and how things affect their decision making, right? One is they're actuarial entities, right? So meaning that they're essentially making prognostications about the future based upon the past, right? So for example, you come into them, you say, I'd like to buy some insurance. They're going to look at your driving abstract, how many accidents you've been in, how many tickets you've had, and they're going to make an assessment of whether they want to insure you against the prospective risk that you might run into someone else and cause an accident, right? That's what insurance companies do. So they make a prediction about the future based upon what you as a potential customer have done in the past, right? And so every one of the lawyers that's going to be potentially representing someone who's been injured in a car crash, they've got what's called an EIN. They got a FEIN, a federal employer identification number, right? And so insurance companies, they know what they've paid out to individuals because they've got our EIN, right?
Right.
And if I was an insurance company, the number one thing I'd be concerned about when a case, like if I was seeing who was on the other side, I'd just be looking up that EIN, seeing what happens in terms of the claims. How many of them were filed? How hard were they litigated? How often did these cases go to trial? I mean, the fact that they go to trial and the fact that there's verdicts in these cases is all public record, right? So keep in mind, like an insurance company is an actuarial endeavor. They're looking at the drivers and trying to figure out what they're going to do in the future based on the past. Well, they're doing the same. If they're even like a little bit like smart, they're doing the same thing with the lawyers, right? So every single lawyer's got a jacket. They got a letterman's jacket they're wearing, right? and you just got to look at it, right? So how many of all those cases that lawyer has handled, and the insurance company's gonna look at the volume. How many claims have been handled through that process, through that office? And then what's happened in terms of litigation and trial, right? And verdicts, right? So, I mean, I'll give you an example. Right now in our office, we're currently at an estimate of 75% of our claims being resolved for the policy limits, meaning like only 25% of all the claims that handled through my office don't settle for the maximum amount they could possibly get. Okay. And that happens precisely because when they go and look up my EIN, when they go look up my letterman jacket, when they see what my record is, they know that it's not going to be easy. And because of that, you can go ahead and ask other lawyers when you're considering hiring them, hey, are 75% or is 80% or is it 65%? Like what percentage of your claims are settling for the policy limits? Just ask them. Most of them are probably going to say, I don't even know, right? I don't know how many, right? They're not even paying attention to the metric, right?
All right.
But you don't get yourself in that position unless they go, oh, well, like if we don't tender the policy, there's actually going to be a consequence. He's going to file, he's going to get a verdict, and we're going to have to pay more than the policy, right? So, the results sort of speak for themselves, right? There's really no way to fake that, right? You can't bluff an insurance company because they're keeping track of everything you've done in the past. Right. For the same reason they're looking at your driving abstract when they're deciding whether they want to insure you and they want to set the premiums. Because, like, okay, what have you done, Mr. Lawyer? Right? And I will say this, because I've been in this practice for so long, right? Because in 2009, when I started this practice, it was just me.
Yes.
I can tell you, I'm getting more money now than, 20, whatever it was, 16 years ago when I started this firm. And that's because of all the litigating, all the trials, all of those things that go into what an insurance company is doing when they're establishing or trying to evaluate prospective risk. When they're looking at prospective risk, they're looking at what the lawyer did, right? Because they're doing an actuarial analysis on what's going to happen with respect to that case with that lawyer involved, right? So that's the same analysis they're doing when they're deciding whether they want to do it and to want to insure somebody. They're going, how many accidents you have? Okay, 3 accidents in the last 4 years. Okay. And how many moving violations? Okay, 5. All right, well, we're not going to insure you. Or we're going to put you over into the, Bristol West or whatever. We're going to put you in the doghouse and you're going to have to pay higher premiums, right? I mean, there's always somebody who will insure a bad driver, right? But they got to pay higher premiums because that's what insurance companies do. They look at past behavior and they make a determination about what their risk is about the future based upon the past. Well, they do the same thing with the lawyers, right? And so if you want to know like how good a lawyer is, ask what their average settlements are. Ask what the relationship of their settlements are to the policy limit tenders, right? Like, what do insurance companies think about them? Okay, well, you can tell me whatever you want, but then what are your outcomes? And I can go back month over month, January, February, March, April, May, June, this year, July. I'll tell you exactly what percentage of those claims resolve for the maximum amount that client can get, right? And I know it exactly, right? And so all I need to do to know how good of a job I'm doing is just look in the mirror. right? Because you can just ask yourself, you can just get that positive feedback, right? I don't know if you've ever, it's just like, like if there are no beautiful women who are interested in you,
Right.
maybe you're ugly. You know what I mean? Right.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the way it looks, right? Like if you have trouble settling claims, right? If you're not getting the numbers that you think you should get, it might be it's you as a lawyer. You're not scary enough, right?
Right.
So that's really the key, is to be always very honest about yourself, right? Be candid about yourself. Look at the feedback you're getting from the world, and then you can know whether you're doing a good job. So I think, the objective evidence that I can present in terms of how effective I am and how I'm viewed by the insurance carriers are the same thing.
Right.
You can either BS yourself or you can be candid about it and address it. It's kind of like this. People are attracted to what you are, not what you say you are.
Right.
And so what I am is I'm somebody who makes sure that my clients get the maximum amount of money in their pocket that they can possibly get. And I do it every single time in every single case. And because of that, because I've always done that, and because I've been doing it for years, that means sometimes as a lawyer, you're losing money, because litigating is spending more time on a file. So if you consistently prioritize the client and you de-emphasize how much money, meaning how much work you're putting in to get that outcome, in aggregate over time, not only are you, the lawyer, going to make more money, but you, the lawyer, is going to make more money because it's a contingency fee, and you're going to make more money for your clients, right?
Right.
When I'm bragging about how much money I bring in, I'm bragging about how much I can bring in for them.
Wow.
Right? I'm bringing it because that's it, man. Like my personal success is merely it makes me smile because it means those other people got good stuff, more than what they would have got with somebody else. That's what makes me sleep like a baby every night.
Hey, man, that's I'm gonna applaud that. That was beautiful right there. I love that. You've been quoted, and you I hope I'm not wrong on this. You tell clients you fight for them as if you were the one that got hurt. That's a powerful statement. Have you ever had a case where that became more than just a slogan?
Listen, I'm going to say this. Money talks and bullshit walks, right? So like, there's not just one case. There's so many cases, because it's all, if I was doing it more like the way I was doing it, say for 20 years plus, right? There's so many times when I dug deep and
we gotta you're in the matrix a little bit. Can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah,
you're in the matrix. Got caught up.
When I used to do this, I always have. I can hear you. Can you hear me now again?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
No?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, are we back?
At least people know we're live now.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many. Okay, yeah, I mean, there's so many instances of that, right? I mean, you could start out with, and I mean, like, okay, so there's a Mulabai case, there's a Garbani case. There's ones that I've won and there's ones that I've lost, and there's just there's the Gibson case. There's cases. There's Nathan Scott Johnson. There's cases that I've personally gone up on appeal on, just because I thought it was right, and I've lost, right? I mean, like there's the Durant's case. That one I was so furious about, right? So I spent my own money on it. Like the client I said, we got to appeal this. I spent 20 grand on it. We appealed it. We lost. I ate the 20 grand, right? Because all that stuff adds up, right? Every bit of work and time that you give to every single case, the insurance companies are looking at every single thing you do. They're like God. They know when you are a PUSSY. When you give up, that goes down in the permanent record, right? When you give up, when you win, when they win, meaning when you go, when you give up, right? That's on your record forever. And that doesn't happen with me. It doesn't.
Wow.
I hate, I don't want to sound like, look, there's no bitch in me. I will never, ever, ever back down. No, never. Right? I'll never do it. I'm like 150% chingon. I will not let these motherfuckers fuck with me. Okay. I'm not trying. I hate using the swear words, but that is just the way it is, right?
No,
So I'll go down with the ship,
you.
and I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you, this is an example of this, right? In December of 2017, this was December of 2021. It was December 17th. I was in trial, and I had a heart attack. It was the day when I perpetuated some testimony from one of the treating physicians in a case, this John Schmall case, right? And so I have the heart attack. I go into the hospital. I get stents put in. Thank goodness, right? Judge McCullough decided, well, he wanted to have his Christmas dinner, so he pushed our trial out to January 7th. Now, I was trying to get the claim resolved, but I couldn't let on that I had this heart attack, right? So I had 2 more weeks, right? And for that, I was, so the trial kind of suspended for 2 weeks, right? I was like, thank goodness. And I just sat in my basement, right? And I tried recovering. I watched this old Sopranos over again, right? And then but I knew I had to go back to trial. And I knew if I could obviously ask, I said, look, I had a heart attack. Let's just postpone the trial. But I knew we wouldn't be able to get it resolved. And so 2 weeks after I had a heart attack, I just restarted that trial up. I did my opening statement. We picked a jury. I put my client on. We had a drop dead number in that case of $750,000 for him. It was a shoulder surgery case, and that was John's number. I talked to him, and he said, "Well, look, we're either going to get that number or we're going to go to verdict." And so, yeah, just went back, and after having a heart attack, we just went ahead and did it. And as it turned out, we resolved the claim after John testified. But like that's the level of dedication that I have, right? That's the level of, and I kind of have taken a step back because that was like hard, you know what I mean? Like, 'cause I like, hey, you can give so much, but like that's a lot, right? That's a lot. So yeah, but I mean, like, I just think it's so important. It's such an important job because when someone's hurt and they're financially decimated, John's a sheet metal worker, right? This guy's he uses his body for making his money, right? So when you have somebody like that, it's like, my gosh, like he can't take care of his family. You better put your life on the line for that, right? That's to have someone lose their livelihood, right? They entrust you to try and make that right, and you better take it seriously because I do. So that's really what I'm all about. And I do it again if I was in the same circumstances.
Man, what you just did right now, what you're doing right now, the compassion that's coming out of you. I mean, I can just imagine you in the courtroom. If I was sitting there in the jury, I would just your conviction, to what you stand for and what you believe in comes across strong. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, man. You are definitely in that upper echelon of what you looked at. What would the younger Zach? Let me do it this way. What did success mean to the younger Zach versus what success means today?
Well, I think when I was younger, I mean, as a younger lawyer or a younger person?
Younger lawyer. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, what I wanted to do. Okay, keep in mind, right? We get a third of what we recover on behalf of our clients, right? So success as a plaintiff lawyer means personal success and also professional success. So it's almost to a great degree, you can't be a successful plaintiff personal injury lawyer unless you're making a lot of money for yourself, right? So for me, the success that I imagined in terms of myself personally, I have largely accomplished, right? I mean, I've become someone who makes a tremendous amount of money for my clients and also for myself, of course. But that's but I mean, you know, so like when I was a younger lawyer, I guess I have what I thought I wanted, right? And so, you know, I wanted success. I wanted to be a great trial lawyer. I was willing to do anything. I was willing to forego any other things that were important in my life. I delayed my marriage, or I mean, I just wasn't even serious about getting involved in any kind of relationship when I was a younger lawyer. I didn't have any plans to do anything other than this. I threw myself entirely into it. So, you know, like from 2003, I got married in 2014. But you know, like I put a lot of things off. I was 40, right? I did nothing but work, and I've done a lot of that since. So, you know, you just have to, you know, I subordinated many other things that people put as a priority to making sure that I could become the greatest that I could possibly be. So in that regard, I'm a success as a lawyer. I've accomplished, I think, largely what I would like to have accomplished in terms of how much I've gained materially. I think that I still define success in the same way as, you know, I still think you got to look at how much you've done, how much money, you know, how much money are you making for your clients? But I think my definition of success has been modified in some way by things that I've learned, including the teachings of John Wooden, right? Which is that maximum effort. So I think when I was younger, I didn't have that definition, right? I mean, I worked so hard and so long to be able to get good at this. And like I said, I probably I maybe gave up things that I should have maybe focused on more, but that was what I focused on. And now I think I'm more prone to defining success in terms of the effort that I put out and less about the ultimate outcome. And as it turns out, I think that's really the way to get consistent outcomes for the clients anyway. But I'm a lot more forgiving of myself. That'd be the biggest difference. When I was younger, I was merciless towards myself. I would run myself I was like the worst boss you could ever want. I would make myself work on Saturdays. I would make myself work on Sundays. I would stay late. I would go in early. When I started my practice, there was at least a couple of weeks where I worked. I basically didn't sleep. I just worked in the office till like 2 a.m, and then I'd go sleep, and then I'd come back and work more. Yeah, I mean, it's just 100% complete commitment to what I was doing, which was to build this business up. And yeah, I mean, we all have our personal stories, you know, why, right? The why.
The why.
Yeah, the why is I've always felt that I'm right about the way that the world is organized, and that I'm right about my ideas about how to do things. And if you really think that you're right, then there's a real easy way to prove yourself right or wrong. Start your own business and start proving out your theories about how things work. And if your theories are right, you're going to make money. If your theories are wrong, you're going to lose, right? So I always took, you know, being an attorney, starting my practice and having my business, that was my personal challenge to myself to show the world that I had the correct conception of the way in which things are organized, and that I was willing to stake my claim on that.
Very nice. Your level of success and what you've done for yourself goes a long, long way. And in terms of your reputation, Zach, your firm, you said your firm, you've been 17 years now. You're going to 17 years in September. You're going to have your that's your anniversary, right? September.
So 2009, right? And it's 2026, so that will be 17, right? September, I believe it was September 29th of 2009, right? And I mean, if people lived through that time period, they could probably remember that was pretty much the sky was falling kind of time.
Right.
when the week I started my practice, I had like a credit card with at Bank of America, and I think there was like a $30,000 limit on it. And they just called me up and said, "You don't have a 30." No, we're gonna bring it down to like 17, and like I owed like $16,000 on it, and they were like, "Yeah, and you're gonna pay the whole thing off. Like, start making payments," kind of thing. I mean, that's what you remember that, right? I mean, 2008 was pretty much like worst ever. So, but I started in 2009. Boy, I was just like, I was 36. I was a kid, just me. I had at first I was just living in my parents' moved back into my parents' basement.
Right.
So I lived there the first year that I started the practice, 2009, and then I moved out like about 9 months into that. But yeah, it was just like, hey, this is what I did, and I'm gonna do it. And then when you jump into that pool, it's cold, right? But there's no one coming to save you. And so yeah, I've just been doing that ever since.
So how do people find you? Like how did you go about getting your business? What type of
Well, I was working for a guy in Bellingham named Dave Anderson, who was a plaintiff personal injury attorney. And I'd worked there right after I worked for that company doing asbestos litigation. And so I worked for him. I had, I don't know, 35 cases, something like that I was working on. I was there for 2 years. Now, under the 6th and 7th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, clients have an inviolate right to choose their attorney. And under the rules of professional conduct, anytime that there's a material change in the representation that's anticipated by the attorney, there's an obligation to notify the client and give the client an opportunity to make a choice about the changes in circumstances that are happening in their file. And so when one attorney, even if that attorney is an employee of that firm, is going to leave, he has the capability of putting the client on notice that he's going to leave that firm, and also to give that client an opportunity to choose whether he would like to be a client of the departing attorney, that would have been me, or to stay with the existing firm. And the provisions that are often imposed on professionals in other contexts, for example, non-compete clauses, are not constitutional in terms of lawyers, because the right to choose your lawyer resides with the client, right? And it's constitutional. So you can't circumvent those constitutional rights by contract or otherwise, right? You can't have, they're void for public policy. So that means that you have a right to keep your cases if you can persuade those clients to leave. So what ended up happening was Dave and I were about, we liked each other very, very little. Okay. But I went to Dave and I said, look, I'd like to leave, and, let's put it to the clients, or, something like that. Dave didn't really cotton to that idea very well. He offered me some kind of a deal, and I just said, well, let's just put it to the clients. So it's a little bit old for some people, but there was a movie called Jerry Maguire.
Oh man, you brought up Jerry Maguire. Yes.
It was just very much like that. I left the firm in a very kind of hectic situation because Dave was difficult, and we sent letters out to the clients, and we had a lot of conversations with clients about, hey, who would you like to go with? I think 80 or 90%. It must have been like 90% of all my clients decided to go with me. Wow. And so what that allowed to happen was that I already had a lot of cases in litigation. We already had a lot of cases going. So soon after I left, I started settling those claims, and actually making fees right out of the gate, right? And so that's the conundrum, right? A lot of people look at plaintiff lawyers and they see, oh my, these people are so successful, they make all this money, and then they think, oh yeah, I could do that. Look, that car crash doesn't look that hard, or this kind of thing. But then you got to think about one or two very important factors, which is, one is you don't know when you're going to get paid. The other one is you don't know how much. And for many people, those are some really big things to get over. You don't know when you're going to get paid, and you don't know how much. If you've got, anything, if you got any employees, you got to make payroll every 2 weeks. If you're a human being, you need to eat every day, right? Often people have mortgages and car payments and things of that nature.
Right.
Well, you know, if you can't consistently bring in the bacon, right, then it's hard to live. Well, plaintiff lawyer only gets paid until the end, right? Average case settles within 18 months, meaning lots less, a lot longer than that. So you got to get yourself in a position where you're constantly resolving claims. And that's a very complex kind of endeavor, because you have to, you know, think about that retrospect. Like you just try to sort of like just wrap your head around that. You're going to represent all these clients. You're going to do a bunch of work for them. And you don't know when or how much each one of those clients is going to pay you for the services you're going to provide. So that is the fundamental conundrum of being a plaintiff lawyer. And if you've got to overcome that, and overcoming it effectively is part and parcel of being able to represent people effectively. You can't be in a state of financial duress because of your mismanagement of your practice, and also provide good representation for the clients, right? Because you're going to be conflicted. Being broke is a conflicting factor if you're trying to represent people in a contingency fee arrangement. And frankly, a lot of plaintiff lawyers, not all of them, but I would say a goodly portion of plaintiff lawyers are not financially sufficiently solvent to represent people in a way that they aren't pushing people to resolve claims that they shouldn't. So, you know, like that's really an important part of the challenge.
Wow. So getting through that challenge. So you start your own firm, 90% of the clients sign with you.
Mm-hmm.
How does that momentum keep going? What in this day and age with marketing and everything, do you do marketing? And what does a good month look like for you?
Okay, let's flash back to 2009, right? So like I said, I had a lot of clients, you know, say 30, 40 clients. That basically stayed about the same. It was referral from former existing. I will meet with chiropractors. I got referrals from chiropractic treaters and you know, just word of mouth, this kind of thing. Some other lawyers would refer me work at the beginning, right? Yeah, over time, mostly, like I said, referrals from former and existing clients. You develop a reputation, in particular, like, for example, if you represent people who are all working in the same workplace, like the ferry workers, that word travels quite quickly, right? You do a good job for one, they all work in the same workplace, you get referrals from, you know, those people. So yeah, over the years, that's how things were for many years. And then I'd say after about, well, would have been about 9 years into it, 8-9 years into it, I started seeing that, you know, I needed to be bigger. I needed to have a bigger volume of practice in order to be effective. That there's sort of an ideal size. You need to operate kind of on scale to do it effectively, because if you don't do it at scale, you don't have enough financial resilience to be able to make the right decisions within the case. So in 2018, I bought another guy's practice. So I bought a gentleman named Richard Lewandowski's practice. Brought in, that doubled my caseload. So my caseload went from about 45 cases to about 105 pretty quickly. I used that increase in revenue in 2018, 2019 to expand marketing, right? To expand the available credit that I had.
Right.
And to generally like grow the size of the firm, to bring on more staff. That was the first thing I did to grow the practice. So I grew it by buying one practice. 3 years after that, I bought another practice. And at that point, you know, with the same objective, bringing on new clients, increasing the revenue, increasing the creditworthiness of the firm, increasing the scale of the firm, and in doing so, making the correct environment for bringing the forces to bear that are necessary, and the administrative processes that are necessary to be able to effectively handle the number of claims that we had. So the process of building the practice up in terms of capability, I mean, administrative capability, financial capability, and so forth, are also part and parcel of being in a position to develop the marketing, right? The velocity with which you can resolve a claim, meaning how quickly you can bring a claim from womb to tomb, is intrinsic to making a law firm, a personal injury practice, profitable. That's the factor. You have to be able to do that quickly and do that with many cases at scale in order to make the claims resolve fast enough for you to actually have a profitable business. So that in order to have a profitable business, you have to do things at scale. And then in order to market for cases, as opposed to just hustling around former and existing or going to Kairos and things like that, you need to have strong cash flows, right? Strong cash flows fund the marketing. And if you don't have the strong cash flows, you can't do the kind of marketing that you need to do to get new clients from marketing, right? So you can kind of, if you contemplate the fact that the most difficult thing to do as a lawyer, period, is to get new business in the door, right? And in order to get new business out of the door, you have to have an effective methodology for creating a strong cash flow. And that means that you have to have administrative processes that are effective, and you have to have that letterman jacket, right? You need to bring both things to bear, right?
A letterman jacket. I love that. I love that. The letterman jacket. Go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have. They got to know that if you file, what's going to happen? Are you just going to go there and monkey around, or does this guy actually go to trial? How many verdicts does he have, or how many? What happens when you do your thing, right? And then in terms of the claims administration, like presently we have 325 or 330 car crash and slip and fall cases, right? Well, if you got 330 cases,
is that all together?
That's all together, but car crashes is probably like 240, 250, something like that. The rest being slip and fall, trip and falls, and various other types of claims. But if you want to be in a position of making any money, you got to have some capability in terms of administering a large number of claims. That's an endeavor that requires a lot of organizational skills. So if you loop back to 2021 it was right around 2021, I bought another firm. A woman named Anne Marie Evans sold me her firm, and what I did is I took that money and I hired a guy who was at the time when I hired him was working as a project manager for Oracle, the software company.
Right.
And I had him come in and build the system that we have, really, which is the workflow and the integration with various software programs. So we really have a pretty sophisticated processing apparatus, because you have to have the staff, you have to have the CRM, the case management system, and there's various software programs that you have to work in concert with that, but it's fundamentally a workflow. Essentially, you have to have, there's certain constituent parts of a personal injury case, but car crash in particular, where you need to have people working on different parts of that file all the time, So for example, you're always needing closing statements. That means there needs to be a bookkeeper who works full time, who does nothing but generate closing statements. You always need to be doing subrogation on a case, right? So you have to have someone who's dedicated to doing subrogation. You're always going to have new cases coming in the door, so you have to have someone dedicated to intake, right? You have to always be litigating cases, so you always have to have a litigation paralegal and a lawyer who's there to litigate, right? I mean, you got to have all those people, because all those things need to happen every single day, all the time. And if they don't, you don't have steady cash flows. You don't have strong, robust cash flows to fund the marketing. So they are all one big circle, right? And everything needs to be done competently if you're going to be in a position to make a lot of money and to be able to market, right? Because the most, I would say the most potent accretive event any lawyer can do is to sign up a car crash. It's the hardest thing to do as a lawyer. If you can do it effectively, you will make more on an hourly basis than any other lawyer in the United States. I'll give you an example. There's a I think it's called Law 360. It's a publication. It's like about lawyers inside baseball, right? They had a guy who was the highest paid white shoe defense lawyer, right? And he's apparently getting the highest hourly rate of anyone. I think he was some kind of a specialist in like intellectual property or something like that, right? Well, if you, I mean, I just say this to illustrate the point, not to be like boastful, but if you go ahead and you count out my hourly based upon the revenues that we've had at this firm going back to January 1st, this guy's not making anywhere close to me on an hourly basis. So this guy's the highest paid lawyer in the place. Why is that? That he's doing something more complicated than me and from a legal standpoint, or is he? Right? Because the thing that makes it so that we get paid a lot here is because we signed up 35 cases in the last 30 days. And if you go back 30 more days, you signed up 70 cases, right? Because the hardest thing to do is to sign a car crash case. And you can only sign a car crash case if you've got everything else going correctly, right? Because everything else is what creates those steady cash flows to be able to market for cases effectively. And so it's the potency of the act of signing a precious case, which is the hardest thing to do. You have an event that happens somewhere in the state of Washington. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know where it's going to happen. And you got to somehow figure out the way to be the lawyer that person decides is going to sign up with you, right?
Right.
So you got events where you don't know when and where they're going to happen. Once you sign the person up, you don't know when you're going to get paid for the work that you perform for them, and you don't know how much you're going to get paid by it, right? And unless you can do those things very effectively, consistently, which is very hard to do, you're not going to be able to do the hard thing when you get that case and you go in and you go, wait, do I argue to a jury? Do I argue to a defense lawyer, or do I try to convince my client to take a number that he shouldn't take? Well, the only way you can do the right thing is if you've got money flowing, right? So the most important thing that you can do to be in a position to represent your clients in an effective way is to have a very well-run business that creates strong cash flows, so you don't ever have to pivot to your client and start making arguments to him for why he should take less money than his case deserves.
Man,
that's like fundamental. And I'll say this: I work for lots of lawyers who like to say, oh well, they don't admit it, but instead of arguing to the defense attorney or the mediator or a jury, when it gets really hard, they pivot to their client and they weave a tale where the most likely outcome is the one that the lawyer wants because he's got payroll to make, because he can't afford to make the hard call. So all those things are connected. You can't do a good job on one part of this and then decide we're going to slough on everything else. It's got to be done right. It's got to be done from beginning to end correct, and it's got to be done from beginning to end for every single client. You can only evaluate the success of a personal injury plaintiff practice on how well it's providing service to everyone. Everyone's mutually dependent on everybody else in that practice. That cohort must be all given the correct representation, where they have decisions to make about their cases, where the lawyer and the people who are involved in managing that claim are looking after their interest and not having the financial difficulties that the law firm might be having affect the ability for that client to get good, solid representation, honest advice, candid advice about the situation that they're in, right? They've got to be in a position where they are being given the opportunity to make a decision about their case that's not colored by the lawyer's motivation in terms of wanting to settle the claim.
Very, 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 very good points that you're making. I have an acronym. Listen to you, and it kind of I did this before the show, before talking to you, and we've talked now for an hour and 9 minutes and counting, and it's been a beautiful conversation. Like the stories that you've woven together about who you are. You brought up Lee Steinberg. You brought up
John Wooden.
No. You brought up Jerry Maguire.
Oh,
And
Jerry Maguire, yeah.
I've spoken, but Jerry Maguire was officially about Lee Steinberg. So Lee Steinberg is a friend of mine.
You know more about the movie than I do, right?
Yeah, Lee Steinberg he's a friend of mine. The fact that you brought that up, and he has a thing that he has words of wisdom he does on Wednesdays that he puts out, and just where you're coming from. You have a lot of zeal. So you're zealous. So I had Z for zealous. You're very zealous personality. You're a strong advocate. You have a lot of courage, and you have honor, and you're human, and you care about your fellow man. So those were the words I had: zealous, advocate, courage, and honor.
Zealous, advocate, courage, honor, and that's Zach. Is that right? Well, I like that. I like that. I think that's 100% the case. You got to act in good faith, man. I mean, what would you do if your best friend asked you to represent them in a personal injury case? Like, how would you treat that person? What if your daughter or your son asked you to represent them? And that's how every client needs to be treated. Right? Like that, right? And I'm telling you, it isn't that hard. You just set that as the standard and you do it.
Right.
It always is, because, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the important thing about it. It really isn't about how they are going to perceive you. It's about how you, meaning me, how I'm going to perceive myself. Because that's why I do it. Because I won't look in the mirror and think, boy, I got all this by persuading some client to take a turd settlement. That ain't going to be me. So so I'm very selfish in the sense that I want to make sure I feel okay, I feel good, and making a good outcome for my clients is what makes me feel good.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So when you see Loudr Lawyer, the final question I'm gonna ask you: what does Loudr Lawyer mean to you? When you see a Loudr Lawyer?
Well, I think I have a lot to say. I'm willing to share my ideas about this practice, how it's done, how you can do it right, how you can represent clients who've been hurt in a way that's both ethical and moral. And so when I hear the words Loudr Lawyer Network, what I hear is it's a network. I mean, it's a platform for lawyers where lawyers who have a message can amplify that message by saying it louder. I think that louder may be some individual. I don't know who that is, but their name certainly calls to mind amplifying the message, right? Amplifying the message that you have so that others can hear it, more people can hear it, and they can hear it more clearly. Wow,
that's well said. Well, Zach, I want to thank you for being on the show. And you're the epitome of what from the human perspective and from an attorney, your story is amazing, man. Inspiring, uplifting.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on the show and to tell you and the audience a little bit about me and my story and my practice and how I do things. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Hold on.
Thanks for being a part of the Loudr Lawyer Network. If you're enjoying the conversation, let us know. Give us a like and subscribe to never miss a thing. We'll see you next time right here on the Loudr Lawyer Network.